Hey everyone, we're going to check out places like the US, Taiwan, Iceland, Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, South America, Africa, Europe, and the Philippines, New Zealand, and more. We are going to do a sweep around the world and see what major events have taken place with earthquakes and volcanoes. Some crazy things are happening. We're going to check it out. Let's do this. Hope everyone's doing fine. I actually taped this several hours ago, well, quite a few hours ago, and more has transpired. So I'm going to tape this global report again because there's several hot spots that I'm noticing and I want to make sure that everyone knows about them. Let's take a look at Indonesia, Philippines, New Zealand, and Australia first, and we'll go all the way around the Pacific and come back around to this spot. But I want you to take a careful look. A lot of these happened days ago. If you see the orange, they happened days ago. Well, larger ones are starting to happen more recently in certain areas, especially in the Indonesia area and Papua New Guinea area. The larger ones are the red ones. Now, they had some previously, but those were days ago. But the really, really big earthquakes that are happening right now, like the 4.7, they happened about 11 hours ago. And we can see what's taking place over here. If we click over this way, about 3 hours ago, there was a 3.0, which isn't that bad. But then there's one here that's in the same spot as they had previously days ago. I'll see if I can get that for you. 20 hours ago, they had a 5.3 in that area in Indonesia. So the Indonesia earthquakes are really happening a lot. They are starting to have volcanoes erupting. They've had them for some time now. They've had 3 erupting in this area. And you can also see the yellow ones are the ones that's under unrest. And we'll have to keep an eye on that for that particular area. Now, offshore from Australia, there has been earthquakes happening in this area. About 22 hours ago, they had a 4.7. We won't go through all of them, but just to give you a general idea. Now, they did have some smaller ones that was in this area down here by Melbourne. They're actually having true earthquakes instead of unconfirmed earthquakes. Well, there's one there. They happened about 6 days ago. But this recent one was actually an earthquake. They had a 2.9 also. Tasmania is pretty clear. Now let's talk about New Zealand. New Zealand, you are having quite a bit of seismic activity offshore and also in the northern island. White Island volcano is currently under unrest. And there's still earthquakes happening. About an hour ago, they had a 2.2, and then there's one here that looks about like a 3. Let's see if we can grab that little thing right real quick. Yeah, oh, it's a 4.3 in that particular area. But look at the Topo volcanic zone area. All of this is just having earthquake after earthquake. Some were several days ago, but it's continuing. And I would say keep an eye on this area in the North Island. Now, a lot of people are unaware that the pyramids, the dark ones, the black ones you see here, are actually what they call extinct volcanoes. So you just had just updated 11 new earthquakes. There's a lot of earthquakes going on, by the way. In South Island, right along the Alpine Fault, there has been earthquakes previously this week. There's one recently here that just happened not too long ago, about 2 hours ago. It was a 3.1. But as we all know, on this side of the Alpine Fault is the Indo-Australian Plate. Over here is the Pacific Plate. And this is why this fault has so many earthquakes happen in that general area. But once again, take a look. You actually have quite a few earthquakes that are happening in this area as well. I'm just really starting to really watch New Zealand because I thought it would let up, but it hasn't. Even though you haven't seen me, guys, I'm still watching and still reporting some things on Twitter, and I'll make sure my Twitter is there. But offshore, you've had quite a few earthquakes that happened, and they were pretty large. Some of them were 5s, some of them were 4s in this area here. As we go up, it's on. In this particular area here, this is also considered the New Zealand area. They're having 5.4s, 5.1s, 5.3s. So there's some very large earthquakes that are happening just north of New Zealand. As you can see, you actually have earthquakes that are happening in this general area near the volcanoes. You have some that are under unrest, some that are only one, and you actually have some that are under warning in this particular area. As we go towards the Solomon Islands, you can see that the earthquakes are getting large again. Papua New Guinea, 12 hours ago, had one 5.0. They also had other ones 4.7, and it looks like there's several of them all in the same spot. So this area is really hot. I wanted to talk about it first. Indonesia has had quite a few all throughout this area here, all the way up to the Philippines. Philippines had a lot of orange, as you can see, and those happened several days ago. However, more volcanoes now are under unrest, and they're still having offshore earthquakes. The reason why is because this area here is the Philippine plate, but the Philippines itself is on the Eurasian Plate, believe it or not. But right there, right where the boundaries are for the tectonic plates, is where a lot of those earthquakes are happening offshore. Taiwan, they look like they were pretty clear. They had a 4.5 about 22 hours ago. And as we go on up to Korea, they don't have anything, but Japan does. A lot of theirs are offshore. Same thing. Right there by the Pacific Plate, all of those earthquakes are offshore. Now, the volcanoes, they do have one that's erupting, two erupting, one unrest, one on warning there, and that's about it for Japan. Now, let's keep going. Now, when we look up toward the Russia area, we can see that there are volcanoes there, and there are also earthquakes. 5.6 happened about 4 hours ago in that area. When we look in the Alaska area, Anchorage has had previous earthquakes that happened. If we get a little closer, you can see those. About 11 hours ago, they had a 1.5. So these are a lot of small baby earthquake clusters that are happening throughout the Anchorage area, Wasilla, Willow area. However, they do have volcanoes that's under unrest as we go down towards the strait. There's two there, two under warning. So they really, it's not that active as far as the volcanoes, but these earthquakes are happening very rapidly. West Coast Canada is pretty clear. Vancouver does have some that are offshore. And you can see that the volcanoes are pretty much still dormant. There's nothing going on, just some previous earthquakes happened. One recently happened in this general area. This area was really hot during the La Palma time, but it's not that bad right now. In the San Francisco Bay Area, they've had past earthquakes that have happened. They also have the geysers that are still going off in the Santa Rosa area. North of Fort Bragg, they did have several of them. Well, one of them was like a 2.0. And as we can see, there's still earthquakes near Tonopah, which is near Vegas, and that's actually a part of Nellis Air Force Base, actually. They have had several earthquakes throughout the El Dorado National Forest, and Yosemite has had some, well, primarily Sierra National Forest has had a few, and those happened about 6 days ago. Now, as we go down, we can see that actually right on the fault, and let's go ahead and take a look at this. They actually have had some earthquakes one just happened about 58 minutes ago in the Pinnacles, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that in that particular area. Now, as we go down toward Los Angeles, as you can see, there's all kinds of little small earthquakes all throughout the area. All throughout Riverside, Anaheim, there were previous earthquakes. There's still some coming that's like in the one magnitude. As we go down to San Diego area, there are some in the general area, Chula Vista area. Mexicali also has some earthquakes that have happened. Now let's go ahead and look at the rest of the U.S. Don't want to drag this out. I want to make sure everybody can see what's going on where they live. Now, we've had a cluster of earthquakes happen in New Mexico and White City. That's been ongoing. It's been going on for probably this past week. It's been going on. Oklahoma has had several earthquakes, and a lot of them are stacked right on that one particular spot. They say it's 3 kilometers from Dibble, Oklahoma. And as we go ahead and look back, let's get rid of that telegram. As we look here, we can see that there's scattered earthquakes throughout here. They're very small. We have to keep an eye on the New Madrid fault area because, first of all, it has been previously soaked last week. And I don't know how bad that is there, but if they were to have an earthquake, it's not some dry ground there. Dunlap, Tennessee had a 2.2. A lot of the unconfirmed earthquakes are gone. However, if you want to know where the majority of the non-confirmed earthquakes, unconfirmed earthquakes are, they are normally located right in this general area. Florida, right south of Miami, had an earthquake on the previous report, but that was probably about 6 days ago. Now, the eastern part of Canada has had several unconfirmed earthquakes in their area. And like I said, this whole general area is mainly unconfirmed earthquakes. But pretty much, the U.S. is pretty much clear. Not too much activity. Had an unconfirmed in Utah, come to think of it. But other than that, it's pretty much clear. It's not that bad. But the West Coast seems to be the ones that are getting the most earthquakes. And that's about it for the states. Now, when we turn around and we look at places like Mexico, they have had a great deal of earthquakes right there on the plate boundary, right on the offshore. They've been going on, still have the same volcano that's been going on for a long time now. Nothing else is active in Mexico except for just a lot of offshore earthquakes and also somewhat inland. The newest ones are the ones that are near like Colima area, and I think Puerto Vallarta isn't too far from there. Now, when we go down, we can continue down and we'll see Guatemala, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. All of these places have all offshore earthquakes. Now, we do have a cluster here in Costa Rica, and one of them just happened about 43 minutes ago. It was a 2.6. However, we have a larger cluster here, and an hour ago there was a 4.2. So in the Costa Rica area, they're having repeated offshore earthquakes. Now, when we look at Colombia, there are several earthquakes in this area. One volcano is actually erupting, 2 are under unrest, 1 is under warning, and 1 is also erupting in Ecuador. And we can continue down. Chile does have earthquakes happening. Peru has some offshore about a week ago. But when we look at Chile, they are definitely having earthquakes right along the volcanoes. You can see here 1 is actually erupting. All the rest of them are dormant. There's 1 under warning under all of these clusters right in that particular area. Let's go ahead and look at Africa. Africa has 2 volcanoes that are erupting. Majority of Africa is flooding. All throughout Africa. When we look at places like Portugal and Spain, they haven't had too many, but it looks as though they had a recent one not too far from Barcelona that was a 4.2. France, that's right on the border of France and also Spain. Now, Germany, on the other hand, Germany has had a few earthquakes and they're unconfirmed. And I'm kind of curious, is this one unconfirmed as well? The rest of these are real earthquakes, but they had one that's in the same general area that's unconfirmed. That means it's not an earthquake. But something happened, some sort of seismic activity happened right here by a volcano that's right in Germany. Okay, you gotta excuse my Telegram. It's actually ghosting. I can't find it on the task manager, even turn it off. Italy has cleared up somewhat. They're not as bad as they were, except for they are having clusters throughout near their national parks in this particular area here. And also when we go down, we can see that there's just scattered earthquakes that are going on there. Sicily is pretty clear. They still have Mount Etna that is erupting, and we also have Stromboli and Volcano, that's actually the name of it too, Volcano, that is actually under unrest in that particular area. Now let's go on around. We can see that Serbia has had earthquakes, quite a few. Albania area, Greece, northern Greece. Greece has had a lot of earthquakes, and also Crete. Most of the earthquakes you see in Greece and Crete are along tectonic plate boundaries. Now we can look at Cyprus. It's pretty clear, not too bad. But Turkey has still had earthquakes. They have not stopped, folks. And as I've explained in other videos, there are 3 tectonic plates that are actually in the mix here. You have the Arabian Plate, African Plate cuts up through here, and you have the Eurasian Plate on the top. So if the plates are shifting, they're shifting. They're just shifting, nothing we can do. Let's go ahead and take a look and see if there's anything else going on. Tajikistan has had earthquakes, but those were, I used to say, about a week ago. And as we go back down, we can see Thailand is pretty clear. Now, India has had earthquakes. However, they have subsided from earlier this week. Iceland has had a few earthquakes, not like before, nothing like before, but they're still having them on their fracture zone that is right north, the northern part of Iceland. In the Azores, as you can see, they still have 2 unrest. Now in Antarctica, they actually have, believe it or not, they actually have a volcano that's erupting in that area. Now an update on the Turkey earthquakes, they have actually had 161 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. Before we forget, we don't want to forget about Haiti and Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. In this particular area, they have had quite a few earthquakes previously in the previous week, also along offshore here in Dominican Republic. Puerto Rico has had the same earthquakes in that same spot. I don't know how I can endure that, but they are definitely having earthquakes offshore and on land in this particular area. But the majority of the earthquakes are actually offshore. An update for the Philippines, they have had 40 earthquakes in 24 hours. And it's probably more than that if we take a look at the stats up there, but a lot of them, those were under 1 magnitude. But for the last 24 hours, Philippines has had 40 earthquakes. And an update on Greece. Greece has had 42 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. When it comes to New Zealand, they have had 62 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. And an unusual amount is for Alaska. They've had 39 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. Another place ranking over 40, well, actually on 40, is France. France has had 40 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. Another place that has had 40 earthquakes in the last 24 hours is the Philippines. The Philippines have actually had 40 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. This concludes our global report on earthquakes and volcanoes. And I just want to say, everyone, make sure you stay safe. And we're coming back. We're getting back in here again. Have to take a break from time to time, but we're getting back in here to report the information to you. Like, share, and subscribe, and see you in the next video. Ciao.